Okay, back for part two of the coaching session with Scott. Okay, so what do you feel about this hand?
I think I keep it because I see so many moving parts.
Right, yeah, I mean, we're going turn one Amulet, turn two Azusa. We've got the Titan, everything's coming up Millhouse. Okay, so let's hit play, see how it goes. Like, even if our Azusa ends up dying, we'll end up having double Amulet and still cast a Titan on three, so I think we're feeling pretty good right now. We
Yeah, I
are
remember
seeing
seeing.
blue.
Yeah, I
Uh,
remember seeing that. I'm like, what am I playing against? Trying to remember. Do I play Zuzu here?
okay,
I think
so
because I'm playing against.
let's pause here.
Yeah,
So you made this choice to bounce the saga rather than bounce the
yeah,
growth chamber. Um, I guess it makes sense to me. So the first thing that pops to mind is even if the Azusa gets countered, we can still go for Titan next turn thanks to the Grazer.
hmm
But I do think you were correct, and the reason is 3 mana to fairy. We can't just leave the Saga in play. If they 3 mana to fairy the Saga after countering the Azusa, then we are left with just Amulet in play. So yeah, I think you made the right play. So let's keep going.
okay.
And even if the Azusa dies here, we are still tightening next turn off the Grazer potentially. So
See, and then I think I screw up here, and I'm like, oh, geez. So I don't know if this is me rushing
mm-hmm.
or tunnel visioning because obviously
Mm-hmm.
I could have just swung in, and then that would have probably shut the door really quickly.
What do you mean you could have just swung in?
Well, I think he was tapped out, so I could have.
You
Oh
didn't
no,
have
you know what?
you didn't
Oh, I
have
didn't have the
Titan
mana.
mana. You had five potentially.
Oh yeah, I think that's what I was counting. I was like, I think I only have 5 mana. And then he does cast it to fairy too.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember.
Okay, so let's pause here because this looks like a complicated turn. So let's say let's go through what I talked about last time, and let's first count how much mana we can make this turn.
What do we got? So I have to cast the Asuza, so I ignore this. So what do we got? 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We got more here. 9, 10, 11. What do we have? 11 mana there? I'm terrible at math too. So like being on the spot, I'm just like,
Okay, so first of all, have we made a land drop yet?
I don't think so because I wanted to play
Correct.
the Viger
Yes.
first.
Okay, so we haven't made a land drop.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so you've got three. You've got three from the lands in play,
Yeah, which I'll cast Azusa.
and well, let's try. I want to try counting this a different way. So you have three from the lands in play, and you have
Mm-hmm.
four from your land drop. That puts you up to seven,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, now I guess okay, it's fine. You use the three for Azusa, so you'll have three land drops. That puts you up to 12, right? Because
12.
four
Mm-hmm.
times four times four, and
Yep.
then Grazer you can count with two amulets as +3 mana.
Yep.
So that would be 15 mana we can produce potentially total.
That should be double times right there.
Yeah. So let's talk about like the optimizations that we can make here. So we obviously have a pretty big glut of mana.
Mm-hmm.
So I generally don't see us not winning unless our opponent casts a Solitude, right?
Yeah, I think this line freaked me out, so I was like, do they have it? Because I see a planes here, and I'm like, do they
Mm-hmm.
have a Solitude? Like, am I going to get blown out here? So
So,
worrying about Solitude is the only reason why I think I wouldn't go. But
so potentially, so 15 mana is a lot.
Mhm.
Potentially, with 15 mana, we could. So it costs 9 mana to double Titan,
Yeah,
which leaves us with a total of 6 mana. Um, Off the second Titan, potentially we could get um, a a Talaria West and a Slayer Stronghold, and then make it so our last land drop, let's say like our Grazer land drop, uh, puts into play a bounce land, which we
yeah,
could then transmute for a uh, which we could then transmute for a Dryad, potentially trying to. So I think there's a potential here that we have the possibility to haste 2 Titans
yeah.
while simultaneously um, having a Dryad in play, which would win even through a Solitude this turn. So let's see if that sequence, is possible here. So now we would be the sorry. I was gonna try and calculate it out. I
Oh,
guess maybe this would be a good exercise. Is maybe before if we do another tutoring session, come back, look at this moment, and see if you can come up with a sequence which
hmm.
puts into play 2 Titans and a Dryad and hastes both Titans. See if that's possible. I'm not sure whether it is or isn't. I have a sense that it is. As an intuition, I have a sense that it is, but I am not. I have not calculated out every single bit of the line just yet.
Okay. I don't remember what I did here. I don't know if I played it safe or didn't see things or what. Or if my opponent scooped, I don't remember.
I have a sense that it should actually work out with exactly enough mana to be able to make 2 Titans, uh, and a Dryad and haste both Titans. But I that's just based on experience and like some rough, sort of like back of a napkin style calculations. But I guess they concede, so the math doesn't matter as much.
Well, you play the Titan with the 6 mana here. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
like it would be possible for us to have a red floating right now. So like
mhm.
let's say if we had a red floating, um, so we could play the Titan. We could get another Titan. So that would take away 9 of the mana we'd have. We'd have um, wait a second, 6, 12. So we'd
Well, there's
have.
also the Razor too,
Yeah,
which
so we'd be left over after playing this Titan, and after playing both Titans, we should have uh, the Grazer and what 6 mana,
mhm.
or no, the Grazer and 3 mana after playing both Titans. let's say that mana is red, white, green. The second Titan grabs Talaria West and Slayer Stronghold. You haste one of the Titans. You now have one green floating. The Slayers untaps. You make 2 blue off the Talaria. You use so you have 1 green and 2 blue. You play the Grazer. You play the Grazer, which gets you the Simic Growth Chamber into play. You use the Simic Growth Chamber and the 2 blue. You get a Dryad. You play the Dryad. And then you play any tapped land, which you tap twice to haste the other Titan. And then you can attack with both Titans.
Yeah.
Something like that. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. These complicated, but these are things like, that's what I was saying is like, these are complicated turns to navigate, and I think like going through and just starting with like how much mana you can produce, and then trying to work through, okay, if I have this much mana, I'm in the territory. If I have 15 mana, I'm in the territory of thinking about getting 2 Hype Titans and a Dryad and hasting both potentially, and then seeing if that's even possible would be like the next thing to look at.
Yeah. I think the second game ends up being more back and forth, and I think as the games get longer, that's where my decision making with tutoring really starts getting kind of shaky, particularly. I don't think I keep this.
Yeah, I think this is similar to what we saw before of just needs a bounce land, and we don't have the bounce land, and it's even kind of worse than some of the needs the bounce land stands we've seen before. So yeah, I agree. Let's throw it.
I think because he's a graveyard deck, I think I'm really tempted between the Hearse and the Cavern for this.
Okay.
So I think I keep this.
That makes sense to me. What do you feel like bottoming?
Probably Grazer, because I don't think I need 2 in this scenario.
Right. Yeah, I think we're kind of stuck. Where if we had both Grazers in hand and we bottom anything else, we're gonna end up not even having the land drops to make. So yeah.
Looks like that's what I do.
I think after this, I'd like to look at the blue white and the 4-color, because
Sure.
so like what I'm getting, my impression from watching these games is where I'd put you right now. Just my impression is that you can hit play. I'll tell you to pause if there's anything relevant. Is I'm putting you at like an intermediate Titan player, so I'm not seeing you've got a good sense for the deck. You're not making major play mistakes. You know, there's small things like you forgot about the Hushbringer, and but like your evaluations and your heuristics, at least there's some hands that maybe like you kept that were bad, but like looking back you can see that they were bad, so that's less concerning to me. But what I would say is like where I think you are at a point where I don't think I need to help you with the basics. I need to help you with taking it to the next level. Is what I'm seeing.
That's kind of where I feel stuck. Like I was doing well last week. I was getting a lot of 4-1s, 3-2s, and I think I got like 1 trophy. Mm-hmm. But like I feel like when I start playing with better opponents and in longer games, I think that's where it really starts.
Yeah.
I start seeing the difference where like, oh geez, like this 4-color player really knows what he's doing.
Right. So I think some of this stuff is just going to come with time, because like I mean, we can talk about like the Hushbringer thing. Like that's just a thing that it's like, okay, let's stop here. Let's stop here. Let's.
Okay.
Uh, okay, for a sec I was like, are you not tightening this turn? Okay, never mind. Okay, so
I just don't have the amulet.
right, so it doesn't matter which phase you do it in. I was just like, I was just worried for a sec that maybe you weren't tightening, which there's not really reason not to. Um,
Makes solitudes.
you know.
I don't remember what I get here. Do I get?
Okay, let's maybe pause for a sec. So I noticed you grab Simic Talaria. I think
Mm,
I'd maybe be considering at this point something like a Celestia Sanctuary Talaria, since we already have the
yeah.
other two blue sources, because of like like that can sometimes help you like naturally haste a Titan without an amulet or something. I mean, there
Sure.
is the consideration of like what if they do something that interacts with one of your lands, but I mean, if they played something that interacts with a land out of this deck, I'd probably expect that's only going to be like Spreading Seas, which can't take you off a blue source. So I don't really see a reason to necessarily get the Simic here over like a Celestia Sanctuary.
Yeah, definitely getting Gruul or Slovenia makes
Yeah,
way
yeah.
more sense.
I think would have been.
And then I start looking at his mana. I'm like,
I,
oh, he might start hard casting soon.
I
So
also really like that you didn't block with the Grazer there. Keeping the Grazer in play as something to sack to Archon, I think
yeah, exactly.
is really good. So you hold up endurance rather than transmuting. I think that's fine. Um,
I think that was my logic.
yeah, I mean, I might have transmuted there because I'm like, he doesn't even have anything in the graveyard yet, and worst case scenario, you can still evoke the endurance,
I think
um,
I'm thinking like he might be sandbagging,
but
and
yeah,
I'm just
it's. I don't think it's like, I think your play is fine too. I don't. That's not like something I would classify as like right or wrong either way. That's just like a, you know.
I think just
I
because if I
also
were in his
noticed
position,
that you okay. I guess you're continuing to hold up endurance is what you're doing.
I
Okay.
think that's what's happening here.
Yeah.
I think I want to hold up endurance because if I
Yeah.
were
I
in his
was.
position, I would feel like I'm not winning. I'm like, I need to make just one big turn.
Yeah. I mean, I the other thing I was thinking is like with the Grazer in hand, like you have even a card that you don't care about throwing away to the endurance, and it's not like the body on
Sure.
the endurance is extremely relevant. It's nice, but it's not like the end of the world. And just being a little more mana efficient, it might have been better to transmute than holding up the endurance. But
I agree with
uh,
that.
yeah, it's a little bit marginal here. I think also holding up the endurance makes sense. The other thing with like the holding up the mana for the endurance though is like they know about the Talaria West, and you might be like telegraphing the endurance a little bit too much. Like the endurance is
Mm,
at its best when it's a blowout, right? You
yeah,
know,
you're right.
uh, so like I'd much rather blow out and uh actually like exile an Archon in response to a persist than I would like keep them from ever playing the persist because of the threat. You know.
Yeah, that makes a lot. I'm so focused on what they might have that I'm totally telegraphing my play.
Yeah. So like thinking about how the way that you play might be giving information to your opponent.
Yeah, I think he hardcasts here.
Okay.
And then I don't remember what I do here. I think
Probably
I just make
grab
tokens.
Dryad and
I
I don't know.
think I make the tokens because I'm just like, oh, saga tokens. So that could have been a mistake. Yeah, actually, looking at it, yeah, that's we're doing Grub Dryad. Oh, okay. I do. I missed out on 3 damage.
I think in this situation, I think I would have rather than just grabbing two Valakutes, I might have wanted to grab Valakut and then
Uva,
Vesuva on
get the
a bounce
extra
land.
trigger.
Like Vesuva on a bounce land, bounce the Vesuva to my hand.
Hmm.
And that way, like, you can sort of, you have that machine gun ability with the, like, Dryad. So, like,
Yeah.
how do we lose this game? Losing this game, step one of losing this game is our opponent answers the Titan, right?
Hmm.
And so it's, we want to have a backup plan if the opponent answers a Titan. If we, instead of having the two Valakutes, a, if we have a like Vesuva in our hand, which we can repeatedly play as a bounce land, and then if we draw another bounce land or another land, we might play the Vesuva as a Valakut to get two triggers there, and then play the land to get two more triggers. You know, depending. Like I think I think that sets you up nicely. So I think getting into these scenarios where you're ahead, don't take the fact that you're ahead for granted. When you're in a spot, when you're in ahead, when you're in the driver's seat, that's when you got to stop, you got to pause, and you got to ask yourself, from here, how do I lose? Right?
So in that scenario, you would have grabbed the Vesuva, and
I would have
when
grabbed a
I
I would have grabbed Valakut and Vesuva copying a Simic growth Chamber. I would have killed
bounce
the
it,
Archon.
yeah.
I believe you would still have a land drop this turn, so you would also be able to kill the Solitude post combat. Um,
Oh, okay.
Even if you didn't have the land drop, I'd still make that play because you know the Solitude, the body of the Solitude just doesn't matter. It will die to Valakut triggers at some point, or if the Dryad gets answered, it's still not that important because then we'll have the Titan and we'll be able to get to Talaria West for like another Titan and we'll just overwhelm the board. Like that Solitude body is not the end of the world. The way we lose this game, the way we go from the position we are right now to we have lost the game, step one is our Primeval Titan is answered.
Yeah,
And in
makes
the
sense.
event our Primeval Titan is answered, we need to have that like machine gun Valakut potential.
I guess I was looking at the sagas as being my backup, but um,
Oh, I guess yeah, because a map that makes
mhm.
sense. Um, but I think yeah, I guess that's fine. If
But
we're
no,
if
I mean what you're
yeah
saying is still right. Like
yeah.
I think just having this becomes such a problem if they
Mm-hmm.
answer this is. I
Yeah.
totally agree with that.
And even like let's say you know okay, uh, like another thing that could happen is like let's say they untapped and they supreme verdict, right? At that point, if you have a Vesuva in hand, you would get to make two saga tokens, sacrifice both sagas. One gets an amulet, one gets an expedition map, and potentially you could like expedition map for a like saga and then Vesuva on that saga. I mean, in this situation, you'd probably be expedition mapping for Talaria West because you do have the second Talaria West in the deck. Not every list has a second Talaria West, or you know there will be situations where you know you're out Talaria Wests.
Yeah,
I think, yeah, just sort of like, um, just like you can keep playing. I just think a very common play pattern is when you have Dryad getting Valakut and Vesuva on
and
about
the
bounce
Silva.
land is like going to be a it's sort of one of those things like Simic Talaria, which it's like it's not every time you do Titan, but it's one of the more common
Yeah,
grabs.
I saw in your other coaching video that you did that you mentioned like getting that extra trigger. So I
Yeah.
tried, I think after watching that video, doing that.
It's only an
Um,
extra trigger if you have not played any land
yeah,
threatening. This would also be a situation I would have grabbed Expedition Map over the second amulet.
yeah.
Just once again, like ways we lose this game,
Hmm.
Titan gets answered, right?
Yeah, and I think this, like I said, as the games like start
Yeah,
getting long and like I'm figuring out what to tutor, I
yeah,
think when I start playing against the really good opponents, this is where I start getting punished and
right,
kind of like
right.
stuck in being like not bad, but not like good at the
Because
deck.
like, what if our opponent had like Ephemerate here, right? And then
Yeah.
they Ephemerate the Solitude, they hit the Primeval Titan, they untap, the Ephemerate comes off, the they ephemerate the Dryad, and then they've got the Archon that they've just put on top of their deck. They cast
Hmm.
that Archon, like suddenly we're losing, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like if we have map, we can untap, we can crack the map, we can get Chalaria West, we can get a Titan, we can, like potentially try and cobble something together, So,
For sure. Like I definitely didn't. I when I casted this Dryad, I
mm,
remember being like, I remember I didn't like this play,
mm,
this turn that I had because I was like, I could have gotten really blown out,
mm,
and luckily I didn't. But I do remember this turn I was not happy with.
yeah. Yeah, I think if our opponent had an ephemerate in hand, we probably
Yeah.
would lose here. I mean, I think it's unlikely for them to have it just based on like I think if they had it, there would probably been a lot of previous turns where they might have cast it. So like, and I don't know really when they would have drawn it, based on their play patterns, but you know, it's once again when you're in the driver's seat, you got to be asking yourself, how do I lose from here? And
Yeah,
and
and I
and
think
yeah,
that's my problem. Um,
let's maybe look at like the blue white or
Blue
the
White. Yeah, for sure. This I think it's this person because
yeah.
I get so punked out by solitude, or like play
Mm-hmm.
around it so much. And I don't know. I think there are a lot of problematic things that I did
Mm-hmm.
um, against this opponent. Oops. I think I kept this hand.
Okay.
Um, I have no idea what he's playing,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't have a colored source. But I'm really, I guess I'm looking at between the map and this to at least get something down. But I don't know if this should have been a mole.
So let's look at how this hand sequences out. So the way I'm reading this, I'm thinking turn one probably we're maybe looking at a turn three Titan because we've got turn one Saga map. Turn two we could do Vestige, crack map, get a bounce land. Turn three we can make 6 mana because we would have 4 from the two and the vestige, the saga, the bounce land, and then each of the grazers is +1. But we would be short on the green mana. But there's a
Yeah.
lot of things that can fix that. For example, if we draw any untapped green sources, including any caverns, that fixes that. Um,
Like, was this a keepable hand?
are we on the
Like, should I have kept
play?
this or mold?
We're on the play. I think I think this is keepable. I
Okay.
think this is keepable. It's weird, and really the bottleneck of this hand is the green mana.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that there's a lot of sequences and a lot of card draws we can get in which turn one saga map into turn two vestige crack map grabbing bounce land leads us to a turn three Titan. And there's even more situations where even if we don't get that turn three Titan, we get the turn four Titan. Um,
I
so
have no clue how if I sequence the way you're describing.
Okay.
No.
So you start on the grazer. Okay. So your sequence is basically you're not setting yourself up for the potential of a turn 3 Titan, but you're
Yeah,
developing your
same.
mana a little better and blocking a little better for a turn 4 Titan, which in several matchups will be fine, and good. Like if your opponent goes turn 1 Goblin Guide or Ragavan, you're going to feel like a genius. So I don't. This is different from how I would have sequenced it, but I don't think this is necessarily a wrong way to sequence the sand.
I think my logic was then the next turn I play a saga, I can play a map, I can
Yeah.
crack it depending on what they're playing.
Yeah.
And they do that, and I'm like, God damn it.
One of the reasons I love Karn is you can play Karn and then you can plus it on a chalice and it kills the chalice.
Yeah. I, I think when I see that chalice, I'm not entirely sure what to even grab or if I should grab it, but then
Yeah.
also knowing they have prismatic ending. So I think I'm like, do I play the long game here?
I think this is an interesting line where you grabbed a saga. I kind of like this as a like your I think it's a little bit scary as far as if these saga tokens don't go all the way, you're
Yeah.
having trouble with your green mana, especially since there's no map left in the deck.
Hmm.
But also, like, you don't, even if you had green mana, you don't even necessarily have anything to use it on. And even if you did, there's a good chance it would get countered. So, yeah, I don't know. I think this is basically what you've said is like, I'm going to make my plan be make a bunch of saga tokens and make them um, have an answer to that. I guess one of the things I'm concerned about is we're only, if I'm counting correctly, we're only going to be able to make one saga token next turn, which is maybe not ideal
Yeah.
because it means we're only getting 3 tokens total. But
Hmm.
yeah, I don't dislike this play.
I think once I see they have the chalice and everything, I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to develop a
I
combo
think
plan so early.
like I said, I think there were other ways to play this game, but I think you developed a game plan which has a very reasonable chance of resulting in you winning this game, and I think there's not necessarily, you know, I can't say that's wrong, right? And I don't.
Hmm.
As you've developed a game plan, there could be other game plans, but I think this is a good way to approach it, and it's a good game plan for this game. So I think you played this game differently than I would have, but I like the way you played it.
Oh, okay. I think I'm just praying that they don't have a verdict. And they do.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't have the green mana, so I'm like, oh, this is pretty bad. That happens though.
Is there a reason you didn't put in to play the Azusa
I
that turn?
think, yeah, honestly, I think I don't know if I tunnel visioned or if I just like basically skipped through
Mm-hmm.
and played too fast because obviously looking at them like I could have
I
played
also
some.
think I would have rather. I think that turn I probably would have played the Azusa and I would have uh, left the Crumbling Vestige in hand just so that you have the
Yeah.
ability to cast a Titan if you draw it. Right? I mean, you could leave the Sanctuary in hand too. I just don't have a lot of faith that the Azusa is going to survive. So
I'm
um,
trying to remember. I don't know if they had 2 mana up, and if that might have also
they
been the
had
one.
1 mana up. They just had the Steam Vents.
Oh, yeah, then no, like definitely should have just cast that and then
Yeah.
could could I have cast a Titan that turn too?
They have a Chalice.
Oh yeah, that might have been when I got tunnel vision done, the chalice.
Yeah, you
I
might have just
think I'm just
thought.
like I think I'm sandbagging the Zeus. I think that's what happened.
Okay.
Um, because I'm thinking like maybe I can get like one turn, sneak it in somehow. I think that was the logic here.
Like one
because
turn where you make them counter the Azusa and then create some wild combo.
yeah, I think that was the logic and why I'm also keeping the
Yeah, that makes
Grazer there.
sense. I mean, we're in the back seat. We got to play for tricks. Okay, let's hit play. Let's see. I mean, I think realistically at this point we've just lost this game,
Yeah,
but
and I think I know that too. I'm like,
yeah. So like if we had made the play I had described last turn, we would be able
mm-hmm,
to at least try to cast the Titan this turn. Like
yep.
99.9% chance that it's getting countered, but you know,
I know that too. I'm just like, they're definitely gonna have a counter, but at this point, I think it's over for me. Um,
I definitely would have played the. Oh, I guess you play the Azusa out. I think I would have played the Slayers and not played the Azusa because at this point your Crumbling
mm,
Vestige is your only second green source in hand. Um,
totally makes sense. And I think I realized that
but it's
the
also
next
possible,
turn.
like at this point, that you're just like only gonna play the Titan off of. I mean, at this point they've memory deluged. Like the game is over.
The
But
game is over. I think I know that, and I think I'm. And they have Castle Vantra. Like,
I think you could have hasted the Azusa into the Teferi, and they would have either had
oh
to
yeah,
like block with the shark or take some loyalty on the Teferi there.
I think I felt defeated at this point. I'm like, I think this is over.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I just
Yeah.
stupid.
I think so. I think one small optimization you could have made that game that would have made a difference would have been the turn where I talked about playing the Azusa, playing out the
Mm-hmm.
Azusa, bouncing the Crumbling Vestige, and
Yeah.
then next turn you would have had the chance to try and slam the Titan, and
Mm-hmm.
like who knows, like that was before they uh, played the Memory Deluge. They we know one of the cards in their hand was a Shark Typhoon. Who knows? For all we know, like their hand could have been like Shark Typhoon Solitude or something, and like maybe there's a way to cobble something together. So
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, I'm like, I don't think I should have sandbagged the Azul stuff, but
yeah,
I think I felt the game slipping at that point with the mana sources
I
where I
I
priced
also
myself
don't
into the
think.
saga.
I also don't think with the Celestia Sanctuary, I don't think you should have left the Celestia Sanctuary in hand. I definitely think you should have bounced the Vestige to just be setting up like
Yeah,
double green for the Titan.
for sure. I should have definitely
So yeah,
kept that in
I
my
think I think
mind.
the first part of the game, I think I liked how you played it. I liked the sort of saga token plan. You're saying you're making them have the supreme verdict. It's not
Mm-hmm.
like the best hand, but you're also in a bad situation from the moment they play the chalice. So you're sort of playing for like
Yeah,
any chance you can get. But yeah, I think post that, as the game started to drag on, it seemed like your plays
yeah,
maybe got a little less tight.
definitely. I think I think against control, I like this hand.
I agree because it's if you turn one Grazer Saga, you're already making Saga tokens as early as turn two, and you've
Mm-hmm.
got the Cavern. So I like that a lot. And on top of that, you've got the Seiju
Sage
for
of the Chalice.
Chalice. So yeah, I think there's a lot to like about this hand, and a lot of the control matchups are just sort of making land drops, and this hand makes land drops. So like making land drops, looking for your opening.
I've heard you saying some. I've heard you saying some of your things where you take out like two sagas, and I think
Yeah.
after the end of the third game, I was like, is that what I need to be doing?
Okay,
Because
yeah, let's maybe pause for a moment and let's take a look at what you sideboarded for this matchup. So can you right click view sideboard? So you cut
I think
Radiant
I got the one
Fountain,
saga.
Radiant Fountain one Saga, and an Explorer. And let me see, looking at the sideboard, you brought in
Emrakul.
Emrakul, you brought in Besages and Cavern.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I think I'd rather have it's tricky because you're on this like cultivator list, so you are sort of these sort of like the house lists are sort of threat light, and so you
Yeah,
kind of Saga is sort of another threat in the deck, both as it like makes tokens and it
gotcha.
can get map, which can ultimately get Titan. So in a list like this, I think shaving one Saga does feel like about the right number to me. I'd like to be able to keep in the Explore if we could.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm generally not a fan of shaving grazers against control, but
Yeah, I
I. Th-
think I've.
Go ahead.
You think we should do that though?
I think in a
Because
four Explore list, I think shaving one grazer is
oh,
reasonable. I
do I
think
keep the saga on a type of list like this?
I think you can. I think shaving one saga seems about right. I mean, they are still a spreading seas, March of Otherworldly Light,
Yeah.
type deck. So like I think shaving one saga makes sense. I think cutting the bog and the fountain makes sense. I think I'd rather maybe shave one grazer than one explorer. Um, I think in a list like this, I'd also be considering it bringing in like I like maybe one endurance.
Hmm.
Um, I think it does a good job of pressuring planeswalkers, and it also like can relevantly shuffle some things back into your deck. So like
Yeah.
sometimes you can go through like both your Talaria Wests, and then like Endurance can put the Talaria Wests back into your deck, or you
Oh,
can
yeah.
crack
Alright.
your map, and then like Endurance can put map back into the deck to be grabbed off of sagas, which like a lot of times in these types of matchups you want your sagas to be grabbing maps over amulets. So like, and it can also like pressure planeswalkers, and there can be situations where it's like you play an endurance end of turn, they counter that and you untap and you resolve another threat. So I'm not like super high on endurance, but I like the one endurance I think I would bring in is like
Okay.
is like
That
where I'm
makes.
at.
What do I cut for it? Like, do I go down to two grazers here?
I don't think you go down to two grazers. Let me so I'm looking at the list. Um So right now you brought in three lands, you cut three lands. Uh you could cut the castle. I mean,
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
castle is kind of terrible against control since you're always using castle Garen Brigand
Yeah,
or since you're always using Cavern of Souls anyway.
completely forgot about Castle. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And then just bringing in like one endurance, I think just for like that extra it's just
Yeah,
kind
getting
of
a
like
map in Valeria that's nice. I didn't really think about that.
yeah, and like the pressure into planeswalkers and just sort of like the instant speed. It sort of just like pokes at your opponent. It's not like you don't want three endurances because if you keep drawing endurances, they're not like great cards. But these
Yeah.
games become very sort of like complicated and tactical, and having like an extra little way to sort of poke at your opponent or find angles to get yourself into the game can be sort of like a nice thing. Um,
Okay. Should I play?
yeah.
I don't know if I play a bounce land to try to develop my mana. I don't remember. Oh, what's it doing here? Oh yeah, that felt bad.
Just out of curiosity, were you playing back when Dryad of the Elysian Grove was not a Dryad?
What? I'm confused with it.
So the original card, Dryad of the Elysian Grove, the creature
Mhm.
type on it was just Nymph. And then
Oh,
they errated the card to be a Nymph Dryad because of the name. Um, So yeah, when it first got printed, it was just a nymph.
No, I
Okay,
think
let's pause here. What went wrong there? Can you tell me what you did wrong that turn?
did I not develop a token or no?
So you play you played, I believe, a
Oh,
forest and a bounce land. What didn't you do?
just cast Titan.
Yeah,
Yeah, and they're totally tapped out on top of it.
right.
So they would have been forced to.
So let's say you did cast Titan this turn. Let's say instead of playing the bounce land, you played Forest Beside You and you cast Titan.
Yeah.
What what lands do you think you would like to grab in that scenario?
See, that's where it gets tough. I don't.
And let's say the Simic is in your hand.
Yeah. I don't know if I can. Do I get like Valakut and a Vasuva and like force them to take out the Dryad instead of the Titan?
I think that's a reasonable. I think that's a reasonable. You left yourself with two threats. I think also with the Simic in hand, you don't necessarily want to get Valakut Vesuva as much as like say like if you're going that route, you could go double Valakut, right? Because you still
Yeah.
have a bounce land in hand, so you have that ability to do the rapid fire
Oh,
without
true.
needing the Vesuva. So it might be confusing because of the board state we're looking at right now. The Simic's not like in our hand,
Yeah.
but no, I think double Valakut is a reasonable way to go, especially with the backup threat of Emrakul in our hand. Um, the only other real consideration for me would be, to me, there's only like really two choices here, which is double Valakut or Valakut Talaria West, with the thought process being like in the future you could play play the Simic bouncing the Celestia Sanctuary and then play the Celestia Sanctuary bouncing the Talaria West, let's say if they had killed. The other thing I would like to consider, though, potentially, is like counting our Emrakul mana. So right
Hmm.
now, Emrakul costs 11. Um, Hypothetically, it might cost 10 if, say, they Supreme Verdicted.
Yeah.
So if we had 6 mana in play and a Simic Growth Chamber in hand, we play the Titan. We're getting 2 lands. I'd maybe consider something like even like Castle Garenbrig, Cavern on Eldrazi
Yeah.
would be like a consideration. Uh, or Castle Garenbrig, bounce land, bouncing an untapped land. So
Hmm.
let's say if they Supreme Verdict, okay. So after we play Titan, we would have 8 mana. We will have 8 mana in lands in play. 9 if we grab Castle Garenbrig. If we only have the Simic in play, we won't be able to make the 10th mana next turn.
Yeah.
So potentially, if we grabbed Bounce Land plus Castle Garenbrig and we bounced the Cavern of Souls, I like this. Okay, what about this play? We grab Castle Garenbrig, Bounce Land, we bounce the Cavern of Souls. At that point, if our opponent Supreme Verdicts, we can play the Cavern of Souls of an Eldrazi and play the Emrakul.
Yeah. I mean, now I'm looking at this, and I think why I didn't play the Besage is because I was looking at the Chalice and got so tunnel visioned on that
Mm-hmm.
that I was like, oh, I'll just develop my mana instead
Right.
because I was trying to hold on to that Besage, but like
Right.
obviously looking back on that, I'm like, oh, I could have just played the 6 mana
Yeah.
and got so tunnel visioned on the Chalice.
Yeah. So I
And like,
think, yeah, I mean, obviously, I think the thing here, the big thing to take away, like, is you should have played Primeval Titan, but
definitely.
that's not like necessarily, um, as far as like our coaching time, I don't know if there's like anything I can do that is like, hey, if you can play Primeval Titan, play Primeval Titan. Like, there's not necessarily like a coaching advice that I can do that's going to help with that in the
Yeah.
future. That's just sort of like playing and noticing and paying attention to, making sure you're counting the mana you can produce each turn. I think the more interesting question here is what lands do you get after the Primeval Titan, and that's probably more where I can help with the coaching. And I think so. Like talking through the sequencing, I think the considerations you should be putting in your mind for lands you could grab would be here either double Valakut,
Mm-hmm.
Valakut plus Talaria West, uh, or Castle Garenbrig plus Valakut,
Yeah.
or Castle Garenbrig plus Bounce Land,
Yeah, and I
Bouncing the
think
Cavern.
these long games is where I really start slipping up, I think,
Yeah.
with the decision making.
Mm-hmm.
You can't fix that I like totally missed the mana and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think what I do grab. Oh, jeez.
I mean,
It,
here I don't think that it's a bad idea to grab Double Saga necessarily, because they are completely untapped. So it's like you don't necessarily expect the Titan or the Dryad to survive. Um,
I think I'm also just
I
looking
do
at.
think you missed a land drop, um,
Oh,
but um, I guess. Okay, so let's see what you do here.
I think I'm keeping the Colossus and hoping for one more land, and then just producing the
Okay, but
token.
can't you just play the Emrakul? Like, I
Yeah,
mean,
I guess I could have, and just really. I think I was worried about a board weight for some reason. I'm looking at it. I think that's just really silly. Um, like I wasted so much time. I think winning
yeah,
this game because I felt like I have Colossus. I won the whole. I
right.
just I
No,
felt like I
like
was so
this.
ahead, but I'm wasting a lot of precious time.
Yeah, I think you're giving your opponent opportunities to like figure a way out of this when you didn't necessarily have to. Um, is what I'm taking away from this. So, I mean, I think probably it looks like maybe the playback is having trouble.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
only
I'm
been.
guessing probably like probably you did go on to win this game. I'm assuming just because
I
like I can't imagine a control player coming back from under this mountain of value. Um,
yeah, I win this, but like I
but
think
I
I
definitely think like
yeah.
you know if you've got a threat in your hand that you can cast and nothing is going to go horribly wrong from you doing that, like cast the threat, right?
So like if I had just had two lands for the Colossus, do you think like still just cast it?
I mean, you got the cavern, so yeah. I mean, the longer you wait on playing the Colossus, the more you're just like letting your opponent draw a dress down.
Yeah, and that was the other balance. And instead I'm just taking forever clicking through all this.
Yeah.
Like
So
yeah,
we're at the end of our time now. I think at this point this is sort of garbage time. I think you can sort of click cards randomly and
yeah,
win the game at this point. But yeah, so I think what I'm seeing so far, if you want to pause, and we can just sort of wrap up here.
sure.
What I'm seeing, so I want to talk about what your strengths are first, because you got a lot of strengths. I'm seeing you do a good job of evaluating hands as far as keeping and mulliganing, and evaluating what cards to bottom. I
Yeah.
some of the games like we're looking back and maybe you made the wrong decision in the game, but here sitting down talking about it, I think you've basically had good decisions for every keep and mulligan, and for every bottom when it's just been you and me sort of talking it out. And I think, getting to the point where you can do that in game, some of that's just practice. There's sort of this moment where you sit down at the table and everything becomes, your brain turns off a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
that's just life, and that's just magic and everything. Like, that just goes away with time. And I think you've got that really good with like the keeping and mulliganing and the bottoming and the figuring out how to sequence the early turns. I'm seeing you do a really good job of sort of like a lot of this sort of subtle early turn sequencing that a lot of players really struggle with. Um, your sideboarding for the most part has been good. I think like every time, there's like small optimizations that can be made on the sideboarding, and I definitely think it's a thing to continue to think about and work on. But like, that those are your strength areas: your keeps, your mulligans, your sideboarding, which are, for most people, those are their weakness areas. Those are your strength areas. Where I see your weakness areas at is um sort of the math and calculation
Yeah.
aspect of the complicated turns.
Yeah.
And I think what now, did you see those Amulet Titan worksheets that I released?
I know of them.
I think you're like the perfect person to do those sort of worksheets, because they're all about doing that sort of calculation aspect of it. And it's really, it's a skill. It's like, it's like playing an instrument or something. The more you practice of it at it, the more that your brain is going to sort of get into those sort of things. So I think focusing on the calculations, looking for the what's the play puzzles and practicing those what's the play puzzles are
Yeah.
going to be like the big area that I think that you'll start to see improvement in your game, is if you practice on that area of your play.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. I think part of me is like, I almost wonder if it's not the mulligans and the keeps and all that, but if it's just also just, I don't know if it's my decision making or if
Mm-hmm.
I'm autopiloting or what it is.
I mean,
Um,
it's, the there's like there's things to work on, and there's things to improve. There's also, I think, really the thing that you need more than anything is just to play the deck more. Because, like, I look at the Hushbringer play, and I
mhm.
don't see that as a play that represents any sort of, like, deficiency in your, like, ability or anything. That's just, like, a fuck up, right? Like, the
Yeah,
playing the Grazer into, that's just, like, you made a mistake, and it's the kind of mistake that, like, the only way you learn how to not make mistakes like that is
yeah,
by making them, right? And it's just playing enough until you've made every possible mistake. Like, the reason I play better with this deck than a lot of people is I've played this deck for a decade. I have punted more than any person with this deck. I've punted more Amulet games than most people have played, right? That, so it's just, you just need that time, and those things will go away. But as far as the things that you can work on to improve, the things that you can specifically target within your skill set to improve, I think it's the calculation, I think it's the complicated
calculation.
turns and the math. And so I think outside of just playing the game, where you're going to improve is going in, seek out the what's the play puzzles, seek out the
Yeah,
worksheets and other things, sit down and do the math carefully and look at the solutions, try and understand the solutions, try and understand the reasoning of the solutions, and start to think about how you think about things. Start to think about what is your process for coming to the answers, as well as the answers themselves. And I think we'll see some improvement in your game if you work on that.
yeah, I'll have to do that. Dig up the worksheets. I've only been
Yeah.
playing this deck for a few months, so when I
Yeah.
hear people say like I'm playing for years,
Yeah.
um, and then maybe at some point, obviously not now, I would like to maybe at least look at the game three and like
Mm-hmm.
that four color game.
Yeah,
Like I said,
absolutely. I
I
think.
think when it's games getting complicated and long,
Mhm.
and what to tutor and like the math, I
Yeah,
think that is where I'm messing up a lot.
right. That makes sense. I mean, I think we spent a lot of time on a few games today, but we ran into a lot of complicated multiple amulet situations,
Yeah,
and it also seems like those are the situations, like I was saying, that where the work and the focus, those are the times we need to focus on. I think, uh, like those are the places where you have the most opportunity to improve.
yeah.
Okay, I'm going to do a quick YouTube outro, and then I'll find those worksheets for you. So,
Sure.
thanks for everybody for watching this. If you could hit the like button and subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. You can also follow me on Twitter at Punt and I will see everybody next time.